The night was quiet, too quiet. The kind of stillness that settles over a small neighborhood when everyone is asleep, when porch lights flicker, and when the world seems perfectly, peacefully ordinary. But in the early morning hours, something shattered that silence. Something that would send shockwaves through an entire community, capture the attention of millions of Americans, and leave one family desperately searching for answers. A mother was gone, and nobody, not her family, not her neighbors, not law enforcement, could explain how. This is the story of Nancy Guthrie, mother, woman, missing person. And this is the story of what really happened in the dark. Before we go any further, let's be absolutely clear about something. This is not a cold case buried in the archives of history. This is happening right now. As you watch this video, Nancy Guthrie's family is waiting by their phones. Investigators are chasing leads, and somewhere out there, the truth is hiding, just beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered. The name Nancy Guthrie may not have been widely known before this case exploded into the national spotlight, but the moment her disappearance became tied to one of the most recognizable names in American television, everything changed. Because Nancy Guthrie is the mother of Savannah Guthrie, co-anchor of NBC's Today Show, one of the most watched morning programs in the United States, a woman who has sat across from presidents, broken major news stories, and built a career on asking the hard questions. Now, the hardest question of all had come to her own doorstep. Where is her mother? Let's go back to the beginning. Let's understand who Nancy Guthrie is, where she lives, and how a seemingly normal life became the center of a terrifying mystery. Nancy Guthrie is a woman who, by all accounts, lived a quiet, modest life. Not the life of celebrity, not the glamour associated with her daughter's high-profile career. She lived in a neighborhood that most people would describe as peaceful, unremarkable, the kind of place where you wave to your neighbors in the morning, where dogs bark at squirrels, where nothing bad is supposed to happen. The kind of place where people feel safe, where doors are sometimes left unlocked, where trust in your surroundings is simply a part of daily life. But safety, as this case so brutally reminds us, can be an illusion. Now here is where the story takes its first dark turn, and this is the detail that stopped investigators cold. A neighbor came forward, a man who lived close enough to Nancy Guthrie's home to notice things, details that most people would dismiss, details that, in the context of a missing person investigation, suddenly become everything. This neighbor reported that on the night Nancy Guthrie disappeared, something unusual happened. Something that woke him up, something that set his normally calm, docile dogs into a frenzy. His dogs were agitated, not barking at a passing car, not reacting to a raccoon in the garbage. This was different. This was the kind of animal disturbance that tells you, on a primal level, that something is wrong. Dog owners know this feeling, when your animal senses something you cannot see, something you cannot explain, and responds with urgency and alarm. You pay attention. This neighbor paid attention, and what he described to investigators may be one of the most chilling pieces of evidence in this entire case. The timing of the dog disturbance, investigators believe, could mark the exact window when Nancy Guthrie was taken. Taken. That word is important because this was not a disappearance in the conventional sense. Nobody believes Nancy Guthrie simply walked away. Nobody believes she packed a bag and chose to vanish. The evidence, and we will get to the evidence, points to something far more sinister, something deliberate, something planned. But before we get there, let's sit with that neighbor's account for a moment. Because buried within his statement is a detail that has investigators genuinely alarmed, a detail that suggests this crime was not the work of an amateur, a detail that suggests whoever took Nancy Guthrie may have come prepared. The theory, and it is a theory being seriously examined, is that the dog's unusual behavior may not have been caused simply by noise or the presence of strangers. Investigators are looking at whether the disturbance could have been triggered by a jammer frequency, a jam blocking device, the kind of technology that can disable home security systems, prevent phones from making calls, knock out Wi-Fi, and essentially render a home's digital defenses useless in seconds. Think about that. If someone used a jammer, it means they didn't just show up on a whim. It means they knew what kind of security was in place. It means they planned. It means they came equipped. And it means whoever did this wanted to make absolutely sure that nobody could call for help, nobody could trigger an alarm, nobody could leave a digital footprint that would lead back to them. This was not random. This was targeted. And then came the discovery that made every investigator's blood run cold. The back door of Nancy Guthrie's home was found propped open. A back door propped open, not blown open by wind, not accidentally left ajar, propped, intentionally, as if someone had wedged it open on purpose, as if someone needed a quick exit route, or an entrance, or both. And inside the home, the detail that removes all doubt about the violence of what happened here, investigators found blood. Blood inside the home of a missing woman. A back door propped open, dogs going wild in the middle of the night, a possible jamming device used to neutralize the home security, and a woman who has not been seen since.
This is not a mystery. This is a crime scene. Now, law enforcement had already been looking at one specific individual, a person investigators and the public had taken to calling Porch Guy. The name comes from surveillance footage that captured this individual lingering near Nancy Guthrie's home, seemingly without purpose, appearing to case the area. Surveillance cameras don't lie, and what they captured raised immediate red flags. But here is the question that the discovery of that propped back door and that blood suddenly made far more complicated. Was Porch Guy acting alone? Or was he just one piece of a larger, more disturbing puzzle? Think about the logistics of what appears to have happened here. You have a woman taken from her home. You have a back door that was propped open, suggesting either a planned exit route or a second point of entry. You have a possible jamming device that could have required technical knowledge to operate. You have blood evidence indicating a struggle. Could one person have orchestrated all of this alone? Could one person have managed a kidnapping, used electronic jamming equipment, staged multiple access points to a home and left with a victim, all without a single witness coming forward to definitively say what they saw? Investigators are not ruling out the possibility that there were more participants, more than one person involved in the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. A coordinated operation, a team. The implications of that are staggering, because if this was a coordinated abduction, it changes everything about how we understand what happened that night. It changes the motive, it changes the risk profile, and it changes the urgency of the search. Let's talk about motive for a moment, because in any disappearance, in any crime, understanding why something happened is just as important as understanding how. And when you are talking about the mother of one of the most prominent journalists in America, the question of motive becomes almost uncomfortably obvious. Was Nancy Guthrie taken because of who her daughter is? Was this an attempt to send a message, a form of leverage, a calculated move against Savannah Guthrie through the most devastating means possible, her own mother? These are questions that investigators are not publicly answering. These are questions that law enforcement is keeping very close to the chest. But they are questions that anyone following this case cannot help but ask. Because the alternative, that Nancy Guthrie was targeted purely at random, that someone chose her home on a whim, that this has nothing to do with her daughter's extraordinary public profile, strains credulity in the face of everything we know about how this crime appears to have been executed. Planned, equipped, deliberate. Those three words keep coming back. Now let's talk about the FBI, because when the FBI gets involved in a missing persons case, it tells you something.
The federal government does not deploy resources casually. The FBI does not insert itself into local law enforcement matters without reason. Their presence in this investigation signals the gravity with which authorities are treating this disappearance. It signals that this is not being handled as a runaway situation, not being treated as someone who simply chose to drop off the grid. The FBI is here because something serious happened, and the FBI wants to find Nancy Guthrie. The investigation is ongoing. Leads are being pursued. The public has been asked to come forward with any information, and the case, which has generated national media attention, continues to unfold in real time. But here is what we know. Here is what the evidence tells us. A woman was taken from her own home. The scene left behind speaks to violence and to planning. Technology may have been used to ensure the crime could be carried out without interference. Multiple individuals may have been involved, and the clock, the relentless, terrifying clock that counts the hours in any missing persons case, continues to tick. Every hour matters. Every piece of information matters. Every person who might have seen something, heard something, noticed something unusual in the days or weeks leading up to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, every single one of them matters right now. Let's step back for a moment and think about what it means to be Savannah Guthrie right now. This is a woman who has built her entire professional life around truth, around asking questions, around holding powerful people accountable and demanding answers on behalf of the public. She has sat in front of cameras for years, composed and professional, delivering news that breaks the hearts of other families. And now she is on the other side. Now she is the person whose loved one is missing, whose world has been turned inside out, whose every waking moment is consumed by a question she cannot answer with all her years of journalistic experience and skill.
Where is my mother? There are no words for that kind of pain. There is no professional experience that prepares you for it. And whatever you think of celebrity, whatever distance you might feel from the world of network television and morning news programs, this moment cuts through all of it. Because at the end of the day, this is a daughter, and her mother is gone. Now let's return to the evidence, because there is something important about the blood found inside that home that we need to address directly. Blood at a scene tells investigators several things. It tells them a struggle likely occurred. It tells them that whoever was in that home, whether Nancy Guthrie herself or an intruder, was injured. It helps establish a timeline. It can provide DNA. It can connect a suspect to a scene with scientific certainty that no defense attorney can easily dismiss. The blood inside Nancy Guthrie's home is not just a disturbing detail in a news report. It is potentially the most important piece of physical evidence in this entire investigation. If that blood belongs to a suspect, if DNA profiles are run and a match is found, it could blow this case wide open. It could lead investigators directly to the person or persons responsible. It could be the thread that, when pulled, unravels everything. And what about the jammer theory? This is worth examining more closely. Signal jamming devices are not impossible to obtain, but they are not exactly common tools either. They're the kind of equipment used by people with technical knowledge, people who understand how home security systems work, people who are thinking several steps ahead. The fact that investigators are seriously considering whether a jammer was used at the scene tells us something critical about how they are viewing the sophistication of this crime. This was not a crime of passion. This was not an impulsive act carried out by someone who knocked on the wrong door or stumbled into a situation they hadn't planned. Every indicator points to premeditation, to research, to preparation, to someone who sat down and thought carefully about how to take Nancy Guthrie from her home without leaving an easy trail. That level of planning is chilling, but it is also, ultimately, a liability for whoever did this, because planned crimes leave planned evidence. Preparation requires purchases, communications, reconnaissance.
Every step taken before the night of the disappearance is a potential breadcrumb, and investigators are trained to follow breadcrumbs. The dogs knew. The neighbors' dogs knew something was wrong before any human did, before any alarm sounded, before any door was seen propped open, before any blood was discovered. The dogs were already telling their owner that something in that night was not right. Animals have senses we cannot fully understand, instincts honed over thousands of years that register threats on frequencies beyond human perception. If the jammer theory holds, it is grimly ironic. Technology that was designed to silence human communication, to block digital signals, to render modern security systems useless, it could not silence the oldest alarm system of all, a dog's instinct, a creature's primal response to danger. And because of those dogs, because of that neighbor who paid attention and came forward, investigators now have a possible timeline, a window into when this happened, a starting point. This is how cases break, not always in dramatic courtroom moments or through genius detective work. Sometimes it is a neighbor, sometimes it is a dog, sometimes it is the smallest, most easily overlooked detail that becomes the key to everything. We do not yet know who took Nancy Guthrie. We do not yet know why. We do not know where she is, whether she is safe, whether she is being held, whether she has been harmed beyond what the blood evidence already suggests. We do not know if Porch Guy has been apprehended or if he remains at large. We do not know if others were involved, though the evidence strongly suggests that possibility. We do not know how this ends. But here is what we do know. We know that somewhere, right now, someone has information about what happened to Nancy Guthrie. Maybe they saw something they have been too afraid to report. Maybe they know someone who was acting strangely in the days before she went missing. Maybe they are the person who helped plan this and are now sitting with the weight of what they have done, wondering whether to come forward. Maybe they are the person directly responsible. Whoever you are, whatever your role, whatever fear or loyalty or desperation is keeping you silent right now, Nancy Guthrie's family needs you to speak. Law enforcement needs you to speak. There are people whose entire world has been shattered, who are living through a nightmare that no one should ever have to endure, and the only thing standing between them and answers is information. Information that someone out there has. Cases like this, cases that feel impossible, cases built on shadows and silence and unanswered questions, they break because people talk. They break because someone's conscience wins out over their fear. They break because the weight of knowing becomes too heavy to carry. They break because justice, however slow, however complicated, however difficult the path, justice has a way of finding its footing. Nancy Guthrie was taken from her home in the night. She is someone's mother. She is someone's neighbor. She is a woman who deserved to feel safe in her own house, to sleep without fear, to wake up the next morning and live her life. That was taken from her. And whatever it takes, whoever has to come forward, whatever evidence has to be uncovered and examined and followed to its source, the people working this case are determined to bring her home. This story is not over, not by a long way. The investigation is active, the search continues, and as more information comes to light, we will be here to cover every development, to follow every lead, to make sure that Nancy Guthrie's name is not forgotten, that her case does not fade into the background noise of a news cycle that moves too fast and forgets too easily. Because she is not a headline, she is a person, and she deserves to come home. If you have any information about the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, please contact the FBI or your local law enforcement immediately. Do not wait. Do not wonder if what you know is important enough. Let the investigators decide what matters. Make the call, send the tip, take the step. For Nancy, for her family, for the truth that is still out there, waiting to be found.